Hello everyone, and welcome once again to Patch from Scratch, where we take a certain piece of gear and we make a patch completely from scratch. This is actually a continuing series. This is the fourth. Each episode we focus on a specific piece of gear, so you can watch them piecemeal, but the idea is that with each patch we're going to build on the previous instruments patch and make something new and add to it until we have enough pieces of stuff that we can build a song from it. Today we're going to be focusing on the Subharmonicon. Originally, I thought that we would be moving over to the Taiga to do a bass synth or a bass sound. The reason I decided against that, however, is once I make a bass sound, I'm going to probably inevitably have to sequence and create a bass line, which is going to start structuring and putting in place like a melodic structure to the song. And this is something that I forget often, the Subharmonicon can be really super fun, and by fun I say not fun, tuning to something that's already been established. It actually is at its best probably when you start with it, and there's a couple of reasons for that because there's some weird quirks in how Moog kind of put it all together, and also just the way that the thing works. It's a little difficult. We'll get into that when we get there, but first let's just do a recap on what we've done so far. So in episode 1, and I'll post links in the corner to all these different ones, but in episode 1 we used the lemon drop to create this kind of weird pattern, I guess. I don't know. Let's take a listen to it. Here, let me just turn off the diaphragm. So it's kind of got some drones on the bottom, and then it's got a very simple kind of rhythmic thing that's on top of it. Right now, I haven't established a key. I can put, it's just one note that's holding this out, and it's just kind of droning. So I could set this to any key that I want down the road. After that, we went over to the DFAM and made kind of a weird percussive texture. And then in the last episode, we went on the Deluge and we made our own custom kit and built up a drum pattern, and that sounds like this. So, that is where we are at currently. And today we're going to focus on the Subharmonicon and try to come up with some kind of melodic part that's going to kind of guide the rest of the song. So as I was saying, I believe that the Subharmonicon works best playing to its strengths when you can explore and you can just find something interesting. A lot of people would call it a happy mistake machine. I think even more people would call it a lucky mistake machine because the tuning can be a little complicated. I think it's at its best when you use 8-step quantization. And what that means is that's similar to like in a scale when you're on your Deluge, right? There's, in a typical scale, there's 8 notes in a full octave, whether that's a minor scale, a Dorian scale, pretty much everything except pentatonic. Unfortunately, the way that they created the Moog is that 8-step diatonic scale is completely based around C major. So it doesn't matter what note I tune this to, the notes that it's going to select are all going to be in C major. And you can get around that by plugging into VCO1 and sending it a CV. And just like, for example, I could hook it up to the Deluge. And if I wanted my scale to be F major, I could plug it in here. It's in C major. I press F over on the Deluge. Boom. Now it's in F major. Now the tricky thing comes when you're trying to do something like a minor scale, because you're going to have to get into some music theory and you're going to have to be like, oh, okay, well, what's the relative minor of F major to get, or, you know, you're gonna have to know the relative majors and minors in order to get around to creating a minor scale. And that's just for major and minor. All the other stuff gets even more music theory heavy. Now, of course, it'll work, but I think that gets a little complicated. Like if my song was in C minor, I know that's A major, but let's say I didn't, I'd have to send A major to this and then play it in kind of A major and just kind of, it's having like 2 different scales that I have to kind of keep under consideration. And that just makes it kind of challenging. I mean, it's just a lot to keep your head around. Now, alternatively, there is chromatic tuning as well. So 12 steps. So you'd have all the notes in a sequence and you can plug in whatever note you want. And then you can get whatever scale you want. That's really easy. But where I think it gets a little more challenging in that is that now you're going to have at least a few sour notes no matter what in anything you do, because it's not a diatonic scale, right? So as far as exploration, it's a little more challenging because you're going to have bad notes in there and you're going to have to find them and you're going to have to tweak them. You're going to have to do that stuff. I mean, it's not necessarily hard to use your ears, right? But it's just not as fun. It's easier when I know no matter what I tune this to, it's going to make something that's going to be probably pretty pleasing. And then on top of that, the SubOscillators, the way that they work is not to a scale either. It's mathematical subdivision, subharmonic of the root note of whatever you choose. So you can get things like a third and a fifth, and you can get pretty close to getting something pleasing, but they're not necessarily, you know, notes that are in whatever scale you've chosen. So if you start adding a bunch of those, you might just get a lot of extra sub notes that are hard to tune to something else that you're doing. But if you play to this thing's strengths and you start from scratch working just on the subharmonicon to kind of establish what your key is going to be and what it's going to sound like, that's where I think it really shines. It allows you to explore quick, it allows you to have fun, and it's really just using your ear to find something that's pleasing, and then you can worry about tuning everything else to scale on your other instruments. And it's just a smoother process, and it's something I forget all the time, to be honest with you. That's why I'm going to the subharmonicon. Let's dive in, let's get into it. The first thing we're gonna have to do is we're going to have to patch it up. So let me get a patch cable. So I'm just coming out of the trigger out of the DFAM, and I'm sending that to clock because I already have the DFAM set up with clock coming from the Deluge. That's my master clock. And I think for right now, I'm actually gonna mute the drums, turn the volume off the DFAM, and just focus on trying to come up with some cool sounds on here. So let's get started. I'm just gonna get that kind of drone going in the background, and I should see lights moving. Okay. So I always start with just the first VCO and just try to get a sound that I think is kind of vibing. And sure, you know, let's start here. I'm gonna leave it on, I'm using, it's kind of a sawtooth wave, a square wave, and then there's like it uses the saw wave to pulse width modulate the square wave, and it just kind of sounds fuzzy, is what that one sounds like. So we got saw, square, and the weird kind of pulse width modulated one. I think I kind of want a square to start. And I'm fine singing with C, because right now I have C, so this is already tuned to C. I'm just going to leave it at C. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold this, and I'm gonna try to find some subharmonics that I think, I don't know, sound kind of pleasing. So I'm gonna turn up the level on subharmonic 2. I'm just looking for a sweet spot that sounds kind of nice before I move to the sequencer. There you go. That's something. Okay, cool. So now I'm gonna send oscillator 1 to the sequencer. And I'm just gonna hit play. Right now, all these notes are zeroed out. I have it at 2 octaves. Let's just go to 1. I think 1's gonna be plenty. So right now I have this just kind of zeroed out. So I should hear that note on every dot. And now what I'm gonna do, since I have it in 8-step diatonic, I know all these notes are gonna be in key with each other. I'm just gonna turn them around and try to find a cool pattern. Sure. I mean, that's kind of fun. And I'm not messing with any of the cutoff or anything like that right now. I'm not trying to shape the sound just yet. I'm just trying to have a pleasing pattern. And so what's being sent to the oscillator right now is VCO1, so it's this frequency, and these subs follow that one, but you can also send the subs to it too. See, that just sounds bad. Nice. All right, I'm happy with that. So the next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start working with the second oscillator. So I'm gonna turn all these ones off for right now, and I'm gonna just have just the C. And we're gonna find a nice note to complement this. Sure, sounds nice. Okay, sure. So I'm gonna send sequencer 2. We're gonna start playing with that one next. Let's try it. Try to get them at the same time. Alright, I'm going to bring the DFAM in real quick. I'm going to reset this, and I just want to bring the DFAM in with it and hear what we have working so far. So let's take a listen. So down here is just a mixer, and it's a volume level for all the different oscillators and sub-oscillators. So now what I want to try to do is start finding some polyrhythms that are going to play nice with this. bring in the drums too, why not?
Getting somewhere.
I'm gonna turn on some Zoia just to give it some effect. Because the Moogs are always better with effects. You can see how you can kind of start mixing things in. Oh my god, I love this thing. It's just, like I said, happy accidents. I mean, that sounds pretty freaking awesome to me already. Now we gotta think about patching it up a little bit. Thinking about maybe doing some weird stuff we can do with it. Sorry, bumping the camera, but I'm grabbing some cables. All right. First thing I'm gonna try to do is I'm actually gonna take the LFO from the Mother 32 and I'm going to plug it into the cutoff. And this is just, I'm just playing, testing some things, you know? Nope, don't like it. Alright, next, let's try. God, that sounds cool, I like it. So now what I'm doing is I'm actually using the sequence that we're making here to be a modulator for the PWM, pulse width modulation. I'm going to do the same thing with sequence 1, pulse width modulation 2. So that's with it, here's without it. I'm going to leave that there for now. definitely want something in the cutoff, but I'm not sure what yet. So this is sequence 1, so each one of these steps is a voltage, so it's sending that voltage on each step to the cutoff and twisting that knob. Oh man, I might have to be manually turning the cutoff because when I just go like, I mean, that sounds pretty rad. This one might be a pretty minimal patch, to be honest with you. I think it's just going to be playing it. Like, what happens when I turn these down? Oh my god, this just sounds so rich. I'm just trying to find the sweet spots. But I mean, rhythmically, this sounds awesome. This is how quick you can get the happy accident machine to have a happy accident. So what I'm going to do on the mother, I think, is I'm actually going to patch let's do a couple things. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to send the clock here to the LFO rate. It's actually not doing anything. Never mind. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to send the LFO triangle to a mix, and then I'm going to send the mix out of the mother to the cutoff. And what that's going to allow me to do is use a mix knob to kind of attenuate it a little bit. Now I'm just attenuating the LFO, how much the LFO is affecting the cutoff, using the VC mix knob and the Mother 32. So I'm just trying to find that spot. What I'm looking for is I'm looking for what I want it to sound like in the lowest point. I've got a pretty slow LFO going on here. Each one of these rhythms, if you can't tell, what it's doing is it's subdividing the tempo that's being sent by the clock and shifting it a little bit. And it's playing them in tandem. This is so weird. Let me see if I could do something kind of crazy here. No, that didn't work. Ah, it sounds so pretty, man. I really am liking it right now. Well, I mean, I think I might do some more patching, but I need to kind of experiment. Because I really think every time I start tweaking with it, I feel like I'm taking away something, and this is feeling really rich to me right now. I like this. I'll be able to play the cutoff, even though the LFO is doing it for me right now. I'll still be able to play it. And I can do. Yeah, so there you go. Happy Accident Machine, also known as the Subharmonicon by Moog. Pretty amazing. So let's just review everything we've done. Once again, we'll build it all up. So let me just reset. All right. So there you have it, the Happy Accident Machine, also known as the Moog Subharmonicon. As you can see, like I said, especially when you're playing to its strengths and you have it in 8-step diatonic mode, and I mean, obviously we're still doing it in C, why not? It sounds good, but it's just really easy to just twist things around, start doing stuff, and almost instantly come up with a really interesting melody. I think this is totally adding to what we've done so far. So just to recap everything we've done so far in this song, again, this is Patch from Scratch. Each episode is going to focus on a specific piece of gear, but all these episodes are tied together to ultimately build different patches on all the different equipment until we have enough stuff to make a song. The first patch that we made was, once again, on the lemon drop, which was this guy. Then we added a percussive texture on the D-Fam. Then we added some drums on the Deluge. And then finally, today, we created a magic melody on the magic mistake machine known as the Subharmonicon. So let's have a little jam, and then we'll see our way out. Thanks again for joining me, guys. Once again, it's Ryan from Oakland Goats. If you're enjoying this series, I hope you are. This is a kind of a window into my creative process. This is how I like to go about having happy accidents and building songs out of them. And we're gonna keep going until I think next we will go to the Taiga and we'll make a bass line. Then we'll probably go to the Mother 32, and then we'll start building our own synths on the Deluge. And then ultimately we're gonna arrange all those and we're gonna make it into a song. If that sounds interesting to you, consider subscribing. It helps us out a ton, and you'll be the first to see when we have new episodes. So, let me continue this jam, and I'll see you till next time. Thanks for joining me, guys. Ryan out.